knows that I have this practice of identifying who we can trust. And I know who the trusted countries are. So I know country A, I can trust it on this, but I can't trust it on that. But I know with Cuba, on everything, we are together. I believe that our bilateral relations continue to serve as an excellent model of South-South cooperation and human solidarity in the areas of health training and services, human settlements, technical exchange, science and technology, public works, technical assistance for infrastructure, cooperation on water resource management and water supply, and support of professional services in the fields of basic education. The South Africa-Cuba Health Cooperation Program, the so-called Mandela-Castro Health Cooperation Agreement, is the flagship bilateral cooperation program between South Africa and Cuba. Every year, hundreds of South African young people go to Cuba to study medicine. Last year, 450, not 45, 450 young South African medical students who completed their medical studies in Cuba were deployed in disadvantaged communities across South Africa. At the request of South Africa, 217 Cuban medical practitioners, part of the Cuban Medical Brigade, were deployed throughout our country in 2020 to assist South Africa in combating the COVID-19 pandemic. A year later, South Africa nominated the Cuban Medical Brigade for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. Cuba is considered worldwide as one of the leading nations in the treatment of both HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis. And many of its doctors have been on the ground in South Africa treating those exact diseases since 1995. South Africa has learned from Cuba's successes, and we strive to emulate its prevention programs. In June 2015, the World Health Organization recognized Cuba as the first country in the world to eliminate mother-to-child transmission of HIV/AIDS and syphilis as public health problems. Cuba was also one of the first countries in Latin America to roll out HIV prevention and treatment programs and to provide free antiretroviral therapy to all its citizens who were HIV positive. In 2015, 92% of HIV patients in Cuba were receiving dedicated care, and the country had a network of 230 labs testing for the disease. Cuba's HIV/AIDS infection rates are among the lowest in the world due to their health promotion and primary health care support. And the country has even produced 5 generic medicines to combat this disease. This is what I mean by not permitting oppression to make you a prisoner of underdevelopment. When we come to tuberculosis, Cuba has indicated that it aims to be the first country in Latin America to eliminate tuberculosis. This is according to its work plan deposed to the World Health Organization. And it has managed to get cases of tuberculosis down to 6.2 per 100,000, when the rest of our continent stands at 25 cases per 100,000. Cuba has also improved technologies to ensure the rapid and timely diagnosis of tuberculosis. Cuba's 451 community-based polyclinics are the main pillar of its healthcare system, and its healthcare workers are familiar with local problems such as a lack of water and electricity, problems that are also prevalent in our country. So they learn as healthcare workers the lesson of how you provide primary health care in a context where these essentials are missing. To continue, the island of Cuba has more medical staff working in the global south than all of the G7 countries combined. Cuba trains excellent doctors and nurses, which they deploy around the world to places in which they are sorely needed. In 2014, when West Africa was devastated by the Ebola virus, the WHO appealed for urgent medical assistance, and Cuba was the first country to respond and sent 15,000 medical professionals, including 460 doctors and nurses, to West Africa. They were part of the Henry Reeve Brigade, established in 2005 to provide medical emergency support. The irony was that the brigade was set up initially to assist New Orleans in the United States of America to recover from Hurricane Katrina, even though Cuba had been suffering for decades under the US economic embargo. So Cuba showed the United States how to be a humane global citizen. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, talking in 2015, said the Cubans are always the first to arrive and the last to leave, and they always remain after the crisis. Cuba has a lot to show the world. I'm talking more about Cuba and its work so that we as Africa get a sense of what we must learn to do. And we can learn it in partnership with Cuba. Cuba established the Latin American Medical School, where students from 123 countries have graduated. Cuba has restored the sight of millions through Operation Miracle in 30 countries at no cost to patients, and has administered millions of vaccinations, a country under a blockade. Despite Cuba's invaluable contribution to health systems globally, its own population still suffers under the sanctions regime and struggles to get affordable medicines for its own people. It is almost impossible to import medicines from the United States. Cuban ships are not permitted in the United States even to get medicines, and they need a license from the US Treasury to import medicine, which is complicated to obtain. The unfairness of denying Cuban children affordable medicines due to antiquated and hypocritical economic blockades, when Cuba has done so much for the developing world in terms of treating and saving their children, is the ultimate inhumane irony. It is not only in the areas of health that Cuba has played an invaluable role, but Cuba, under the leadership of its revolutionary leader Fidel Castro, played a critical role in assisting African liberation movements to throw off the yoke of colonialism and destroy the myth of white invincibility. From Angola to Namibia, Algeria to Guinea-Bissau. It was Cuba that played a decisive role in contributing to the liberation of these African countries from colonial occupation. This has led many to ascertain that Castro was the most genuine revolutionary leader ever in power at the time. In the words of President Castro himself, he said his comrades were fighting the most beautiful cause of mankind. What motivated Cuba was not only its commitment to the liberation of Africans from colonial occupation, and not just his sense, President Castro, of mission. It was the need to fight the United States in the developing world. Because if you've learned history and politics, you know many of the struggles had powerful hands associated with them. By assisting liberation movements, the hope was that we would weaken the influence of the United States on the African continent. One of Cuba's early forays on our continent was when it provided assistance to the Algerian liberation movement against French colonial occupation. In 1961, a Cuban ship docked in Casablanca with weapons for the Algerian revolutionary fighters. And the ship returned to Cuba with Algerian orphans who were to be cared for in Cuba. 2 years later, in 1963, another Cuban ship arrived in Algeria with 55 doctors, nurses, and technicians to defend Algeria from Moroccan aggression. Later that year, 700 Cuban soldiers and 22 tanks were sent to Algeria. Algerians have never forgotten Cuba's selfless solidarity, nor must we. In sub-Saharan Africa, Cuban revolutionaries were sent to the Congo to support the liberation movement and later the anti-Mobutu movement. Che Guevara ultimately pulled Cuban forces out of the Congo, disillusioned by what he called the ill discipline and corruption of some of the opposition forces. Much of Cuba's focus from 1966 was on Guinea-Bissau's liberation struggle, where Cuban doctors and nurses and troops remained until the country's independence in 1974. 90% of the doctors who supported the guerrillas of Guinea-Bissau were Cuban at the time. This intervention was considered Cuba's most successful until Cuba's intervention in Angola in 1975. The deep and special relationship between the liberation movements of Southern Africa and Cuba was cemented on the battlefields of southern Angola, where almost 500,000 Cubans joined their destiny with that of African combatants to reject the military intervention of apartheid South Africa and to fight neo-colonialism on the continent. Ever since, South African and Cubans have been bonded by a noble history of freedom struggle. On the eve of Angola's independence, Cuban forces intervened in support of the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA. Following Angola's independence, the country had a civil war. What led to a protracted conflict was the invasion of South Africa, whose apartheid leaders saw the MPLA as a significant threat, with the real prospect that South Africa could have crushed the MPLA. President Castro once more took a principled decision to send Cuban troops to support the MPLA. Cuba's ultimate success in Angola was precipitated by a major South African attack which forced the MPLA to withdraw to Quito Carnavale, leaving the fighters demoralized. In November 1986, President Castro held an all-night meeting with his closest aides in Havana and decided Cuba would launch an offensive in the southwest to oust South African troops once and for all. The Cuban attack on the South Africans was, according to the head of the South African Task Force for Quito Carnival, a blinding and deafening strike from an enemy that he said is strong and clever. Cuba had been the decisive element in turning the tide of the Angolan War in favor of Angola's liberation movement. The military successes against the South Africans led to the negotiations in London in June 1988 between Angola, Cuba, South Africa, and the United States. Reading the balance of forces, the South Africans gave up, and in December 1988 accepted Cuban demands to abandon Angola and facilitate Namibian independence. So when AfriForum asks why we want to help Cuba, I have given you the answers today. Were it not for the selfless intervention of the Cubans in Southern Africa over the course of 3 decades, it would have taken far longer to liberate the region from racism and colonial oppression. Nelson Mandela understood this, which is why Cuba was the first country outside the continent that he visited upon his release from prison. Throughout the past 7 decades, Cubans have drawn their inspiration from their inspirational revolutionary leaders. Che Guevara said, "The life of a single human being is worth 1,000,000 times more than all the property of the richest man on earth." Cubans are also inspired by the maxim of the 19th century revolutionary, Jose Marti, who said, "All of humanity is our homeland." So, comrades, that history defines our relationship as the ANC and the ANC-led government with the people and government of Cuba. Having gone through it, I believe it is now incumbent on progressive forces around the world to ensure that Cuba is liberated from the economic oppression of the United States embargo that it has suffered under since its revolution, so that its people can prosper and live a decent life as it has attempted very hard to ensure for the rest of humankind. What we should be doing is we should be using all manner of transportation to send people's parcels to Cuba, parcels of solidarity. We should be ensuring that we have petitions that reach the Oval Office every month, signed by millions. No struggle can end without active cooperation between all of us. So, comrades, out of this meeting, let us decide through yourselves what it is we can do in order to reinforce our efforts to provide support in this time of struggle, but most importantly, to work at an active campaign to end the blockade. All our revolutionary sounding talks, including my own, become empty if they are not supported by an active program. So out of this meeting, let us try and strive together to develop an active campaign of support that is practical, that is implementable, that will make a difference. I thank you for listening to me. Amandla! Amandla! Long live the undying spirit of President Nelson Mandela. Long live! Long live the undying spirit of President Fidel Castro. Long live! Long live Cuba. Long live! Long live South Africa. Long live! A luta continua. Thank you.
Can I get the program from the lady?
Sorry.
Thank you very much. As always. There can be no other way to do. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. Amandla! One more round of applause for our dear Minister, Nalet Pando, for a wonderful speech. And I want to suggest, Comrade Naledi, that you leave us the copy of that speech. So it's made available to all. No, there's a demand. We demand the speech. The masses demand it. So well done, Comrade Naledi. You have closed the case. You know, there's a comrade, I said I'll say a few words in the middle of this, that was smiling throughout when you spoke. None other than our own General Mapanyo, Chief of the South African National Defense Force, is here. General, thanks for your presence here and for the work you do in collaboration with Cuba. Comrades, we are now going to be strict on time to allow all of organizations present here, those that have confirmed to be present and have been allocated in the program, and we've added few more that have arrived and felt that they didn't do, or the invitation came late to them, and therefore in their RSVPing, they confirmed when we've already printed the program. So it's few of those that we have included. I'm now going to call the president of the People's United Democratic Movement, PUDEMO, which is an organization in Swaziland that continues to fight for the complete freedom of the Swazi people. President Comrade Mlungisi Makhanya, come to the stage. This is the party of Comrade Bambata Mario Masuku, who contributed in building the ANC itself.
Amandla, Mandla, long live the Cuban Revolution, long live. Long live the African National Congress, long live. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair, Comrade Solima Paila. Comrades, on behalf of the People's United Democratic Movement, PUDEMO, we want to express our gratitude to the African National Congress and the Alliance for inviting us to this very important Solidarity Conference. We want Comrade Soli to declare, having listened to Minister Pando explaining in such fine detail what the Cubans have done for humanity, that it is not fair that we call this an economic embargo. We should call this for what it is, economic terrorism. We should condemn the United States for this economic terrorism, because listening to what Cuba has done to humanity, we can only imagine what Cuba would have done had it not been under the embargo for humanity. We from Swaziland know very well, Comrade Soli, because our own late Deputy President, running away from Swati's killing machine, was taken in by Cuba and trained as a medical doctor. It is a pity that Comrade Gabriel Mkumane would not live to see a free Swaziland. But we want to end by saying this to the African National Congress, that we want to sincerely thank you, comrades, in the midst of the many challenges that your country faced, that you made time to bring dignity to the people of the continent. You have hosted this Africa-Cuba Solidarity Conference. Just last week, you had taken the Israeli apartheid state to the International Court of Justice. We want to say, as we end, Comrade Naledi, let's find comfort in what Comrade Mahatma Gandhi said, that there is higher courts than all these courts, which is the courts of conscience. We want to say to South Africa that there is no judgment pending on the move that you took last week. For the millions of people who poured into the streets of the world have indeed given their verdict, and it feels good to be African today. Amandla! Long live the ANC, long live. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Mlungisi. Quite exemplary. Now I'll call the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Swaziland, Comrade Kunene.
Mandla. Mandla. Thank you, Comrade Chairperson, General Secretary of the SACP. Thank you to the comrades of Cuba who have awarded us an opportunity to share with them our solidarity and support. We also extend our recognition of the leadership of the ANC, led by the chairperson of the International Relations, and acknowledge the message of support or the keynote address from the Deputy President. And we also recognize your leadership, Comrade Chairperson, here from the SACP Central Committee, COSATU leadership here, led by Comrade Soli Pato and the Deputy President. And we also recognize the various organizations on international or on solidarity with Cuba. We also recognize the ambassador of the countries that are present here as acknowledged. We also recognize the fraternal organizations in Africa, Southern Africa in particular, that have also attended this important gathering. It is important and indeed necessary that we in Africa take this opportunity and reflect on what are the important things and strides that Cuba has done in society to this far. But also it is important to make recognition that what Cuba has done in Africa is enough to also motivate our attitude and our approach in many things. We have learned, and Cuba has reinforced, not only to support the liberation struggles against colonial rule, but it had also influenced our attitude and our habit. We may not also fail to respond that the assignments and lessons they've given to us are quite huge enough, because our political attitude and tendencies have not yet reached that kind of discipline that the Cuban people have shared. And most of those comrades who have spoken and who have experienced the Cuban mentality and culture could confirm that they've gone beyond what we still have to do in terms of human behavior and human conduct, in particular in the field of political work and political activism. We could not actually ignore that in the midst of the present moment, there is a very important impetus of progress that the world should recognize over how we respond and react on solidarity as a phenomenon that necessarily doesn't come because we feel deep with the oppression of others, but it is a mentality of progress and how to mobilize under the new dynamics of this world order, whereby we are all aware that and can confirm that the direction out of what we can do in our own countries, it is necessary that we build from this network that has already emerged after the atrocities and the genocide taking place in Palestine perpetrated by Israel. It is in that notion, therefore, that we need to make sure that we build up from these blocks of this solidarity. And we are quite aware also that it may not be so easy, in particular because it is common thought to believe that Donald Trump, in the end of the year, might regain position. But we must also say that it is immaterial who is in charge of the American administration. With its pawn Israel government, they will always demand and challenge us to organize and do more in our revolutionary work, in particular in the field of solidarity. Cuban solidarity requires something specific that we must do amongst ourselves. Comrades have already stated that what is more important is that we need to support Cuba in all its various entities and its activities, in particular to end this embargo by practically participating and cooperating with Cuba economically and otherwise. Many comrades have emphasized this point to a highest level, and I believe that we believe as a party that this is quite very important to underscore as a landmark, in the sense that we need to ensure that we build up from what already exists. Cuba needs to be supported in mobilization to participate fully as a practical member of the BRICS countries. This could be a gesture that you can support in mobilization to ensure that Cuba participates, even though we all confirm that BRICS is not a socialist bloc, but it is a necessary condition that supports and builds up towards ending the USA dominance over the world and change the world in the right order. Cuba already qualifies to be such a member of the organization, in particular because they have outscored to other countries on the basis of how to manage and distribute resources efficiently, which is part and parcel of what the BRICS mentality is. And therefore, we think that apart from the other aspect of its strength, but it also further qualifies, and we believe that it will be a strong gesture of solidarity and support to the Cubans and can make things very practical, in particular because it is within our ranks and the determination of who participates is within our own category. Let's motivate that Cuba becomes part and parcel of the BRICS countries and ensure that we make things happen in the time possible now. We may not necessarily be illusioned that we may think that it is impossible or it will be so easy to get everything done in support of Cuba. But we must also not underscore that it is necessary that we must put maximum effort and we must make sure that we become aggressive in how we manage our campaigns and our programs towards Cuba. And in the main, it cannot succeed if it is not done and known by the ordinary people of our country, of our different countries. And we must make sure that this conference translates this solidarity into a practical movement that can enjoy support from the entire people of the countries and the world, where we are aware that it is only in the world, the USA and Israel, that vote in the UN against Cuba. And we are aware that they will not actually stop doing so, even though we are quite aware that the majority of countries who support Cuba may not necessarily be in support of its socialist cause, but they are also necessarily an area that you can build up and at the end of everything, make this solidarity campaign enjoy and take practice of this existing impetus. And this line, comrades, as the Communist Party of Swaziland, we thank very much the organizers of such kind of a forum, and we thank all of you for your inputs, and we wish this conference, what all of us have shared that, and others to share, that it must translate theory into practice. Amanda, viva internationalism, viva! Estera vistera siempre! Muchas gracias.
Amanda! Thank you very much, Comrade Kenny, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Swaziland. I must also indicate that the comrade is in exile in another country, not in South Africa. I hope Comrade Minister Pando can take action, because he was supposed to be hosted by us here, but is hosted by another country. So we can continue to give solidarity to people struggling for freedom in their respective countries. I've been asked that we get a delegate from MPLA, as well as a delegate from SWAPO, to go outside there. They will be picked up by our communications team for interviews with the media. We'll be asking others, if they don't see them, then they will come from us. We'll announce it from here so that they can find space and time to talk about Cuban solidarity. I think now ignited by what Minister Pando said. So there's interest that these two particular countries, a delegate from MPLA, Angola, and Namibia, go outside there, the corner, or follow that comrade. That's Comrade Mahlengi. That's Namibia. Where's Angola? Apima Angolan. Oh, yes. Yeah, follow the comrades there. They'll pick you up to the interviews. Thank you very much. I will now ask Comrade Gitlalifile Mutsekhwa, Secretary General of Botswana National Front. Is Gitlalifile here? Okay. Let me jump to Comrade Diego Mamasiani, Secretary General of Alliance of Democrats. No, he's here. Can I ask the next two speakers to come and sit here with me? Comrade Napo Mshweshwe, Secretary General of Movement for Economic Change. Magazine Apambil must come to the front. Come, comrades. As well as Comrade Peter Lam from Sudan People's Liberation Movement, SPLM.
Viva Africa-Cuba solidarity, viva! Viva Africa-Cuba solidarity, viva! Program Director, the Right Honorable Deputy President of ANC, Ntate Paul Mashatile, First Secretary General of ANC, Comrade Mvula Mokonyane, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity as the Alliance of Democrats party in Lesotho to convey our gratitude to the ANC for organizing and for inviting us and hosting us to this August conference on Africa's commitment to the Cuban revolution. As Alliance of Democrats, we urge all the people of goodwill throughout the globe to redouble their efforts to build a world where respect, sovereignty, and humanity are at the top of our priorities. As alluded here earlier by other speakers, I reaffirm that for us Africans, it is a political obligation which abides us all to stand in solidarity for Cuba and her people. Viva Africa, Cuba solidarity, viva! Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Where's Peter? Okay, he ran away. Camera Tiao? Oh, that's the one that's finished. It's Comrade Napo. That's Napo Mshweshwe, Secretary General of Movement for Economy.
Amandla. Thank you, Comrade Program Director. Greetings to you, Deputy Secretary General. Greetings, Comrade Naledi Pando. Greetings to our fellow comrades from Cuba. Revolutionary greetings to you all. Thank you, ANC, for once again having invited and hosted us to one of the most progressive platforms of our time. This is the 7th Cuba-African Solidarity Conference since the first that was held in 1995 here in South Africa. It is definitely quite some commendable journey for the ANC, Cuba, and other political parties in other African countries. But to us, as the Movement for Economic Change from Lesotho, this is our first experience, and we are so much impressed and happy to be in this kind of an environment. We are forever amazed of how the ANC displays its depth of friendship to us as a political party and the country, and how much you value us as your neighbors. You have constantly been exposing us to all the good friends you have met and made along your struggle. As the Movement for Economic Change and the Basotho Nation, we stand firm in support of Cuba through its struggle for the freedom. Our position as a movement is mainly fostered by the Cubans themselves. Their attitude towards our fellow sister countries in Africa and as the Basotho Nation, their selfless historic participation in African independence and freedom, their contribution towards health sector in various countries and around the globe, and particularly towards Africa itself. As the country, we have not been exempted from their generosity in training medical practitioners. Furthermore, we are driven by similar principles that drive most of us under this roof today, which can be summed up as follows. Every country has the right to choose its path of the path of their own in pursuing their development without an external interference. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Napo. I have jumped on my list Comrade Machiseta Mofomobe from Basotho National Party. Can you come to the front as I call Comrade Peter Lamboth of Sudan People's Liberation Movement, the SPLM. This is my party. Yeah. No, I stayed with them. Yeah. This is my party. We're in the front line together.
Comrade Program Director, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, all the delegates representing various revolutionary political parties in the continent and across the world, dignitaries, invited guests, comrades and friends, allow me to extend warm greetings to the leaders of the liberation movements gathered here today, from His Excellency General Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan and the Chairman of the SPLM. President Salva appreciates the ANC under the able leadership of Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and President of the ANC, for organizing this such important solidarity conference between Africa and Cuba. I also want you to indulge me, comrades, to thank Comrade Fikile Mbalula, the ANC Secretary General, for his kind invitation extended to SPLM to attend this historic 7th Cuba-Africa International Solidarity Conference. My colleagues and I from SPLM are very lucky to meet these Pan-African revolutionaries and all the revolutionaries coming from across the world. The revolutionary comrades from Cuba, led by the late great revolutionary leader, Comrade Fidel Castro, supported the African liberation movements and transformation to the hilt, and I think the presentation from the Minister for International Relations has really represented all the feelings of the African people. And for this reason, I will be remiss if I cannot mention to you what the Cuban revolutionaries under Fidel Castro did for our people during the national liberation struggle. From the 1980s to the 1990s, the Cuban revolutionary leadership, when we were very small kids, about 12 years old, they came and took 600 members of our Red Army, most of whom were very young boys and girls, for schooling from elementary school up to the university level. Some of these comrades are now helping and running the institutions of our young government in South Sudan. So thank you very much, Cuba. Cuba also, the leadership of Cuba also trained our military commanders and our political commissars in various technical and military fields. Cuba provided not only ideological but practical military facilities as well as medical during the national liberation movements. Their doctors, as you have heard, played key role in providing medical treatment to our wounded comrades in the battlefields. Cuban revolutionary leaders were among the top comrades who introduced the objectives, the vision, and significance of the SPLM to the Eastern Bloc in the second half of the 1980s in order to acquire international support. Such friendship in time of utmost difficulty is a rare opportunity, and we want to say thank you to the people of Cuba. Cuba, as we all know, provided similar support to all of us in the continent, and for this reason, we always pay tribute and salute to our comrades in Cuba. Our struggle, as you know, was against the imperialist hegemony and the exploitation by those who inherited from the colonial powers. The same policies pursued by imperialist powers during the liberation struggle, such as colonialism, slavery, and now the neo-colonialism are still rearing their heads in the 21st century in many forms, such as economic sanctions, provision of bad loans and arms embargoes, and deprivation from technological transfer. My country, South Sudan, finds itself in similar quagmire situation. We are now under sanctions and arms embargo to undermine our sovereignty and to give upper hand to Western-backed armed opposition to destroy our revolutionary gains. However, I can assure you that the SPLM will never allow that to happen. As we all know, for more than 60 years, Cuba has been under dire circumstances, economic blockades, sanctions, and international bullying. Given this hostile international environment, it is time for us as revolutionary movements, not only in Africa but across the world, to clearly speak with one voice against such policy against Cuba, and for us to show our solidarity in action rather than words. Our position as Pan-Africanist movements against such interferences must be clearly stated. And BRICS Plus, through its development bank, must be consolidated and made inclusive so that it becomes a true alternative to the current international economic and military hegemony. This will be the only hope for the world to breathe and to give this archaic international order a human face. Dear comrades and friends, we stand in support of those who yearn for their freedom, and we reject attempts to undermine national sovereignty in the form of sanctions, arms embargoes, or support for change of governments through unconstitutional means. For that reason, we reject the isolation and interference into the internal affairs of other nations. Therefore, I call upon all of us to stand in support and in solidarity with the revolutionary people of Cuba to protect their freedom and sovereignty. Thank you very much. Amandla. Amandla. Aluta continua. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much, Comrade Peter. And please, as you return back home, pass our special gratitude and solidarity to the comrades in the liberated zones led by General Abdelaziz. Comrades, I'm going now to call, I've asked Machisaja to allow that we call the next speaker because of some emergencies after he had spoken. And therefore I'll call the Secretary General of the CNDD-FDD of Burundi, Comrade Mvigurio. Comrade.
Nyakubahwa murongo y'ibikorwa by'uyu munsi, nyakubahwa mwese murongoye umugambi wa ANC, umwe wese yitavye ibikorwa, tugira amahoro.
Dear comrades from the ANC and all comrades from other countries of Africa, I greet you in the peace of God.
Mbanje gushimira Imana yaduteye iteka katugeza uyu munsi turi bazima, tukatwishimiye ko twashije no gushika ngaha muri igihugu ciza ca Afrika y'Epfo, amahoro mwaho ikigo ca Kiba kijejwe imigenderanire n'ubucuti ku isi cyatunganije inama twatumiwemo.
Let us begin by thanking God for guiding us on this day. We express our gratitude for being able to reach this beautiful country, South Africa. I feel honored and privileged to take part on this important meeting on solidarity with Cuba, organized by the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the People.
Munkundire rero mbanza bashikirize indamutso n'intasho ya kizigenza wacu nyene cyubahiro mukuru w'igihugu cyacu cy'u Burundi kandi umukuru w'inama nkuru y'inararibonye General Ndayishimiye.
Allow me first and foremost to convey the warm greetings and appreciation of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Burundi, who is also the President of the Council of Elders of our ruling party, CNDD-FDD, His Excellency, General Evariste Ndayishimiye.
Dushime ubutumire, dushime kandi ngene mwatwakiriye, agafuni kabagara ubumwe n'akarenge. Uru rugendo ni igikorwa dukenguruka kubera turaronka akaryo kukunga ubumwe, kwiga bamwe ku bandi, kwigira bamwe ku bandi, duhanahana ivyiyumviro biduteza imbere kandi bikomeza ubucuti hagati yacu, gutyo tugakomera dukomerana na kare agafuni kabagara ubumwe n'akarenge kandi turi kumwe twese birashoboka.
We are very grateful for the invitation to this important event and the hospitality granted to me and my delegation. We felt really at home. And this journey, this event is an action that transcends obstacles, aiming to strengthen unity, learn from each other, and continue to foster solidarity among us. Because together we can and we will.
Turashima kandi integuro y'ihuriro nakaryo keza kuvugana uko amashirahamwe yacu yifashe muri higihe c'intango y'umwaka, turabira hamwe ingene igihugu ca Cuba cifashe muri kino gihe inyuma y'ibiza n'isibe, haba mu bijanye na Covid, ibihuhusi n'imiyaga byaje bisubiza inyuma intambwe y'iterambere igihugu cyari kigezeko, byose bigasanga ingaruka yayangirwa y'agahotoro yukugarira imigenderanire no gufashanya n'ibindi bihugu byasizeho na Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika kuva mu mwaka wa 1932.
We also appreciate the commitment of this organization, as it had along the years played a crucial role and is actively working to strengthen international solidarity and collaboration between various organizations and friends of Cuba around the world. By so doing, it's facilitating communication during crucial times, especially the last years. Today is a great opportunity to share our respective countries' experiences and good practices, but also get to know the actual reality of Cuban people after the COVID-19 pandemic, hurricanes or other natural disasters that came to overload the heavy weight caused by the blockade imposed by the United States since early 60s.
N'urugamba rudahagarara kuri twese, ni urugamba rusangi abaharanira amahoro, demokrasi n'ubwigenge ku isi yose bategerezwa kugira wabo. N'urugamba rwo kugwanya agahotoro, akagaye n'igikenye. N'urugamba rwo gusubiza iteka bene igihugu ba Cuba nabo babone ko bubashwe bidegemvya. N'urugamba rwo kugarukana ubuntu mu bantu no kugwanya akarenganyo.
We owe Cuba our unconditional solidarity because this is a journey of a common struggle, a struggle for peace, democracy, and global justice that requires everyone's commitment. It's a struggle against oppression, inequality, and injustice. It's a struggle to restore the dignity of the extraordinary, resilient, and selfless Cuban people. It's a journey of reaffirming humanity among people and resisting oppression.
Afrika na Cuba dufitaniye ubumwe bw'amaraso budacika. Igihugu cacu c'u Burundi inyuma y'urugendo twagize mu kwezi kw'icenda uyu mwaka hariya muri Cuba, n'urugendo nyinshi mukuru w'igihugu yagize muri Cuba, twafashe yuko tugiye gukomeza ubucuti n'ico gihugu mu rugamba barimwo.
Africa and Cuba share a common history of fighting against colonialism and imperialism. Many international Cuban soldiers have sacrificed their lives to support the struggles of Africans in different countries.
Turashima intererano y'igihugu ca Cuba mu bihe Uburundi bwari mu bihano, tugashima ko kandi Cuba yabandanije ifasha Uburundi na cyane cyane mu gisata cy'inyigisho, bikaba bigiye gukomezwa mu misiza ko Uburundi bugiye kugurura ambasade yabwo muri Cuba.
We appreciate the excellency of relations between the Republic of Cuba and Burundi, because Cuba has showed us unconditional support when our country was facing such a blockade by the European Union in 2015. They stood with Burundi until the sanctions were lifted and our country moved from the Security Council of the UN and the UN. And Burundi is now planning to open an embassy in Cuba.
Mu kurangiza twagomba dusubire dushime nk'uko umugambwe urongoye igihugu cy'u Burundi twahisemo rero gushika muri iki gihugu ciza kugira ngo tumenyane dukomeze ubucuti twigishanye iby'uburongozi bwiza n'ibyo gushikirana haba muri politike n'imigenderanire kugira tugwane nk'abavukanyi tugwane intambara nk'abavukanyi.
As we did it this year in September, we visited Cuba and signed a memorandum of understanding where we agreed to continue cooperation and support between our two ruling parties and exchange information in various fields. It's a significant commitment that we have undertaken. We will also continue to request the lifting of the unilateral sanctions imposed by the United States so that the Cuban people can be relieved and achieve all their desired goals with no constraints.
Tubipfuriza umwaka mwiza 2024 ni harambo ubucuti umwumvikano uvukanye hagati y'abenegihugu no hagati y'ibihugu Imana ibahezagiye.
We wish you a very good year and especially to the Cuban people, and viva Cuba, viva the Cuban Revolution.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Comrade General Secretary. I'm now going back to Comrade Machisetsa Mufomobi, President of Basotho National Party, Inge Njame.
Thank you very much, Brasoli. My brother Mhola. The leadership of the ANC, led by the Deputy President who has since left, Comrade Palma Shatile, the leadership of the South African Communist Party, and the leadership of COSATU, the leadership of SANCO, the Cuban delegation, buenas tardes, compañeros. Esteemed delegates, it is my honor and privilege to stand amongst you to deliver this message of solidarity for a cause that has come to epitomize humanity itself and galvanize community of conscience across the globe for decades long before many of our nations here represented established their independent statehoods. My own party, the Basotho National Party, founded in 1959, the same year as the triumph of the Cuban Revolution, which was almost strangled in its cradle by the most vicious onslaught of an inconsolable superpower and an ill-fitting pretender to leadership of the moral free world, where unbridled brutality was unleashed against the Cuban people merely for daring to want to live in dignity as an equal and at peace with other nations. To date, that has not changed, despite the intermittent change in the labels of the presidents of the United States, including the much anticipated and much vaunted coming and passing of a history-making black president. Throughout the 20 years of my party's incumbency, since Lesotho's independence in 1966, our kingdom has maintained a proudly progressive foreign policy of solidarity with the oppressed, colonized and persecuted people and nations of the world, respect for sovereign integrity of all peoples, and peaceful multilateral resolution of disputes among our kingdom has never departed under all constitutional dispensations ever since then. Maintaining this principle stand right in the belly of the giant and fearsome apartheid monster in South Africa. We often attracted a charge of foolhardiness, which were bore with proverbial grin. Of course, we were neither dwitted nor made of any stiffer stuff than being inspired by the noble example of the people and leadership of the Republic of Cuba, from whom we learned a lot along the way, and with whom we maintained a long and lasting relations of mutual respect and brave upholding of common values of respect for dignity of men, women, and above everything else. As a country whose enjoyment of meaningful liberation, freedom, and national independence was inextricably linked with the end of apartheid in South Africa, we benefited immediately from the extortions of the life and death, self-sacrificing Cuba solidarity in our part of the world. As witnessed by the turning point Cuban engagement in Quito Carnival, defeat of the apartheid army in Angola, which set the stage for the talks and accelerated liberation of South Africa and Namibia. Symbolically, the latter was published on the 21st of March, also being a day we used to commemorate the Sharpeville massacre, now Human Rights Day in South Africa. With exiled and college comrades from Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa, whom we used to host in the Mountain Kingdom. We also benefited from Cuba scholarships for medical students and other technical areas, and later the fielding of globally famous Cuban specialist medical teams to assist post our national health system, which continue to date. Throughout the most inclement challenge and most cataclysmic challenges in the international environment, the Cuban people and their leadership have remained consistent in the lending of solidarity to other nations and people in true spirit of the social internationalism of which the Republic was founded. After the collapse of the Soviet Union and disappearance of socialist states on the world stage, or state socialism on the world stage, El Comandante, Fidel Castro, said in an interview after rendering that world-famous speech titled, "Socialism or Death." He said, I quote, "We never knew that one day history would bestow on us to be the last defenders of socialism. But we shall bear the responsibility with dignity and honor," unquote. For some time now, we have lived under the cloud of grand fallacy, and humanity has entered the age of an end of the clash of grand ideologies on the world scale and national politics. National politics is no longer prosecuted on the basis of grand ideologies. That as a collateral, international solidarity on the basis of old-fashioned ideologies belongs to the museum of history. Yet the same evils that beset humanity yesterday continue unabated today, delivered on the same chariot as yesterday, and sped on by the same motives of yesterday. The good old science says, to every force there is an equal and opposing force. So, if the ideas that aid and abet the peddling of evil continue to subsist, so shall those ideas and aid and the opposition of evil in the heads and minds of men and women, even if not objective in institutions of parliaments and armies and courts. What is important, however, is not so much the labels by which we trade, but a keen sense of separation of good from evil, and a consistent insistence to be found on the side of good at all times. That is why we dip our banner in salute of the Cuban people and their leadership, and pledge our continuing support to their unrelenting struggle to break the shackles of imperialism and continue their noble mystery of carrying the torch of humanity. Their example puts wind in our sails as we lend solidarity to the continuing struggles of the people like the people of Western Sahara, popularly known as the last continent, as the last colony of our continent, and the people of Palestine, who have been hobbling under dehumanizing Israeli settler colonialism for 75 years. We would like to continue by taking this moment to salute the gallant effort of the South African government in holding before the International Court of Justice the racist, bigoted apartheid genocide regime of Israel for the ongoing genocide in its executing in Palestine, with impunity and shameless support of the bully superpower in Washington and its acolytes. We hope this effort is appropriately rewarded and becomes a lesson to all bigots and a beacon of hope in all struggling people of the world. In conclusion, let me take this opportunity, DSG, to wish the African National Congress a resounding victory in the coming general elections. Thank you very much.
Kyalawandate bilaterally set to talk to Machiseja for this resounding victory of the African National Congress. We need it badly. Yeah, all forces are arraigned against us, organized by imperialism. Thank you very much, Comrade Machiseja. I will now call Comrade Jeremiah Kioni, Secretary General of Jubilee Party of Kenya, to come to give a message. Then I'll ask Comrade Richard Awantodwana, Secretary General of the National Resistance Movement, NRM of Uganda, to come to the front, as well as Comrade Wang Heming, the Director General of the Bureau of Sub-Saharan Africa Affairs of the International Department of the Communist Party of Cuba, to also come to the front. Where's Comrade Jeremiah? Okay. I don't see him, then I'll go to my other country. That's Uganda. So that's my other country, Ambassador Enrique. Where's Comrade Richard Awami? Not here. Okay, we'll note that. Comrade Wang, the stage is set for you. As Comrade Wang is coming, can I call Comrade Hilma Nikano of SWAPO Party to come to the front, as well as Comrade Amelia Mwendani of our Fighting Frelimo to come to the front as well.
尊敬的非国大第一副总书记莫克尼亚内女士。
Distinguished First Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Nomvula Mokonyane.
南非共总书记马派拉。
Distinguished Comrade Soli Mapaila, General Secretary of the South African Communist Party.
古巴与各国人民友好协会主席冈萨雷斯。
And Comrade Fernando, President of ICAP.
与会的各位同志朋友们，大家好。
Comrades and friends attending the conference, good afternoon.
很荣幸受非国大的邀请，来参加第7届古巴非洲团结大会。
It is a great honor for us to receive the invitation of the African National Congress and to attend the 7th Cuba-Africa International Solidarity Conference.
首先感谢费国大在备战大选的关键阶段，做出周到安排，为大家提供了这样一个凝聚力量、展示团结的平台，有效放大了全球进步力量支持古巴、反对制裁的共同呼声，也体现出费国大在维护国际公平正义上的重要作用。
Let me begin by thanking the ANC. Despite being at the critical stage of election campaigning, the ANC has made such thoughtful arrangements and offering us a platform like this to pull strings and demonstrate solidarity, which effectively amplifies the shared core of the world's progressive forces in supporting Cuba and opposing sanctions.
仅向费国大为此做出的努力致以崇高的敬意。
The conference showcases the important role of the ANC in upholding international fairness and justice, so we wish to pay high tribute to the ANC for its efforts.
也向与会的各国参会代表致以同志般的问候。
And comradely greetings to delegates attending the conference.
中国和古巴是好同志、好朋友、好兄弟。
China and Cuba are good comrades, friends, and brothers.
我们两党两国可以说是传统友谊啊，薪火相传。
The traditional friendship between our two parties and countries has been passed down from generation to generation.
在习近平总书记和古共中央第一书记迪亚斯·卡内尔的亲自关心和大力推动下，两党交流合作呈现出多层次、宽领域的崭新局面，为中古关系全面深入发展提供了有力的政治支撑。
Thanks to the personal guidance and vigorous efforts of General Secretary Xi Jinping and First Secretary Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba, our two sides have exchanged frequent high-level visits, and a model of multi-tiered and wide-ranging exchanges and cooperation between the two parties has taken shape, providing strong political underpinning for the comprehensive and in-depth development of China-Cuba relations.
我这里啊，要代表14亿中国人民，坚定支持古方维护主权独立，坚决反对外部势力干涉古巴内政，反对美国将古巴列入知恐名单。
Hereby, I represent 1.4 billion Chinese people to firmly support Cuba in defending its sovereignty, strongly opposes external interference in Cuba's internal affairs, and stands against the US keeping Cuba on the so-called state sponsor of terrorism list.
国际社会呼吁 美国全面取消对古封锁，我们也将一如既往地为古巴说公道话、办公道事，坚定支持古巴人民维护自身生存权、发展权，支持古方维护主权、反对封锁的正义斗争。
The international community has strongly called on the US to fully lift its embargo against Cuba. We, as always, will continue to speak up and take fair actions for Cuba, firmly support the Cuban people's efforts to safeguard their rights to survival and development, as well as Cuba's just struggle of defending sovereignty and opposing blockade.
中国与发展中国家有着相似的历史遭遇和奋斗历程，都是反对殖民主义、霸权主义、强权政治 斗争的走出来的，站起来的。
China has shared similar historical experiences and arduous struggles with other developing countries. We developing countries come to what we are today after shaking off the yoke of colonialism and rising up from hegemony and power politics.
中国永远不会忘记自己的根和魂，永远是发展中国家的一员。
China will never forget its root and soul and will always remain a member of developing countries.
当前世界进入新的动荡变革期， 和平与发展的时代主题面临严峻的挑战，人类进步视野仍任重而道远。
The world today is entering into a new period of turbulence and transformation, and the theme of our times, peace and development, is faced with severe challenges. The progress of mankind remains a formidable task.
面对风云变幻的国际形势，中国坚持国家不分大小、强弱、贫富一律平等，尊重各国自主选择社会制度和发展道路的权利。 反对少数国家滥施单边制裁，切断发展援助，冻结他国合法资产的错误做法；反对外部势力通过单边制裁或威胁制裁干涉他国内政。
China is convinced, facing the ever-changing international situation, China is convinced that countries are all equal regardless of their size, strength, and wealth. We respect the right of countries to independently choose their social systems and paths to development, and oppose a few countries' wrongful doing of imposing unilateral sanctions, cutting off development aid, and freezing other countries' lawful assets. We stand against external attempts to interfere in domestic affairs through unilateral sanctions or threats.
中国将始终秉持真实亲诚理念 和正确义理观，加强同广大发展中国家团结合作，坚定奉行独立自主的和平外交政策，积极维护国际关系基本准则和国际公平正义。
To enhance its solidarity and cooperation with developing countries, China will always uphold the principle of sincerity, real results, amity, and good faith, and that of pursuing the greater good and shared interests, and will continue to pursue firmly the independent foreign policy of peace, actively uphold the basic norms governing international relations and international fairness and justice.
中国将坚定支持发展中国家反对外部干涉，走自主发展的道路。
China will staunchly support developing countries in fighting against external interference and following the path of independent development.
2024年，中华人民共和国将迎来建国75周年。
2024 marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China.
我们将在以习近平同志为核心的党中央领导下，坚定不移走中国式现代化道路，朝着强国建设、民族复兴的宏伟目标奋勇前进。
Under the leadership of the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, we will steadfastly advance Chinese modernization, and we will march gallantly towards the goal of building a great country and achieving national rejuvenation.
我们也将始终坚持同广大发展中国家一道，继续高质量共建“一带一路”，推动构建人类命运共同体，推动世界走向更加美好、光明的未来。
We will also work with other developing countries to continue to strengthen high-quality Belt and Road cooperation and promote the building of a community with a shared future for mankind, so as to usher in a prosperous and bright future.
历史的车轮滚滚向前，时代的潮流浩浩荡荡。我相信，在卡斯特罗精神的鼓舞下，在古巴共产党有力的领导下，在全球进步力量通力合作下，古巴人民捍卫国家主权独立和民族尊严的正义斗争必将取得胜利。
The wheels of history roll ahead, and the tide of the times flows. I am convinced that with the inspiration of the revolutionary spirit of Fidel Castro and the firm leadership of the Communist Party of Cuba, with concerted efforts of progressive political parties from all around the world, the righteous fight of the Cuban people in defending national sovereignty, independence, and national dignity will be victorious.
祝英勇的古巴人民在建设社会主义的道路上取得更大进步。
I wish even greater strides for the brave Cuban people in building socialism.
祝兄弟的非国大领导国家实现更大发展，推动南非民主革命取得更大的成就。
We also wish the broaderly ANC to lead South Africa to achieve even greater developments and make even greater achievements in the national democratic revolution.
Viva Cuba! Viva! Viva! Viva ANC! Viva! Viva the friendship between China and Global South! Viva! Thank you.
Amandla. Long live China, long live. We appreciate that, Comrade Wang. I'm now going to call on Comrade Ilma Nikano, Secretary for Information and Mobilization of SWAPO in Namibia.
Long live international solidarity with Cuba. Long live. Long live togetherness. Long live. I am saying long live togetherness in order to give meaning to a teaching by our founding president, father of the Namibian nation, and leader of the Namibian revolution, who always says, a people united, striving for the common good of all members of the society, will always emerge victorious. In our struggle for solidarity with Cuba, we shall emerge victorious. Program directors, Comrade Obed Bapela and Comrade Ben Martens, the collective leadership of ANC led by Comrade Paul Mashatile, Deputy President of ANC and of the Republic of South Africa, Comrade Nomvula Makonyane, Deputy Secretary General of ANC, Comrade Fernando Gonzalez, the President of ICAP and member of the Cuban Five. Let me stand by the protocol as already established in the interest of time. It is a great pleasure for the SWAPO Party of Namibia to join the revolutionary forces on the African continent and the world at large on the occasion of the 7th Cuba-Africa International Conference hosted by the mighty African National Congress, the oldest liberation movement on the African continent, under the theme Africa's global commitment to the Cuban Revolution, quote unquote. This is indeed a revolutionary gathering. This important function comes at a very crucial time in the existence of ANC, just 2 days after celebrating the 112th anniversary milestone in this very same city of Bombela in the Mpumalanga province. Doubtlessly, we are proud of the ANC to taking a bold step by directing the government of the Republic of South Africa to take the Israeli government to the International Criminal Court of Justice for its continued illegal occupation of Palestine, spanning over 76 years, especially in the wake of its ongoing massacre and military operations in Gaza, in violation of the international law. The government of the Republic of Namibia has fearlessly endorsed the bravery of South Africa in this regard. Long live the ANC, long live! The time has come for all revolutionary forces to put up a united front and intensify the fight against a unipolar world embedded in imperialism as reflected by the illegal and unjustifiable trade embargo and economic blockade unilaterally imposed against the Republic of Cuba by the United States of America. Indeed, the international community, including SWAPO Party, has joined the people of Cuba in celebrating or in celebration of the anniversary of 65 years since triumph of the Cuban Revolution. An everlasting high sense of heroism led by El Comandante Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz and his comrades. The SWAPO Party and the people of Namibia condemn the continued economic blockade and trade embargo unilaterally imposed against the Republic of Cuba by imperial forces, and hereby call for its unequivocal lifting without further delay. The President of SWAPO Party and the Republic of Namibia, His Excellency Dr. Hage Gottfried Geingob, has repeatedly reiterated that the illegal embargo that the United States has maintained against Cuba for more than 6 decades is a crime against humanity. This is the collective feeling of the rank and file of SWAPO Party and the people of Namibia at large. Namibia is indeed a child of international solidarity, to which Cuba greatly contributed militarily, politically, and diplomatically. The SWAPO Party and other liberation movements in Southern Africa are therefore beneficiaries of selfless sacrifices of the people of Cuba, as already alluded to by many speakers, who actively participated in the fight for the independence not only of Namibia, but other African states as well. While some of the countries supported our fight against colonialism and apartheid on the political and diplomatic front, El Comandante Fidel Castro and his comrades deployed the sons and daughters of Cuba soil to fight side by side with us in the trenches, and some of us bears testimony thereof, in the process of liberating our country. We will therefore forever remain indebted to the people of Cuba. Long live Cuba, long live. Long live. Over the years, the Cuban people, under the stewardship of the Communist Party of Cuba, have achieved remarkable successes in the struggle to frustrate the vicious, aggressive maneuvers of imperial forces in defense of Cuba's national sovereignty and security, as initiated by El Comandante Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz. The success achieved by the Communist Party of Cuba in steering Cuba to even greater heights, despite sabotage efforts by imperial forces, is an inspiration to all progressive forces around the world, and Namibia is no exception. In conclusion, Director of Ceremonies, we henceforth highlight the undeniable fact that time has indeed come for the Republic of Cuba to be accorded an opportunity to realize its full potential without any setbacks by imperial forces. This is not only our singular conviction, but the collective position of the United Nations Charter, our global organization. Long live the international solidarity with Cuba, long live. Aluta, Ia Victoria. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade Ilma. I must say that yesterday, or a couple of days over the weekend, the First Lady of Namibia, on a Twitter account, blasted the complicity of European countries who were joining to condemn South Africa's action against apartheid Israel. And she reminded Germany in particular of the genocide they committed in Namibia. Thank you very much, Comrade Hilma. Now, comrades, I'm going now to give to Comrade Amelia Mwendani, member of the Political Commission of Frelimo of Mozambique.
estrella. Cuba, qué linda es Cuba. Quien la defiende la quiere más. Qué linda es Cuba, Cuba, qué linda es Cuba. Quien la defiende la quiere más. Linda es tu cielo, linda es tu mar, linda es tu farol de libertad. Qué linda es Cuba, Cuba, qué linda es Cuba. Quien la defiende la quiere más. Qué linda es Cuba, Cuba, qué linda es Cuba. Quien la defiende la quiere más. En este día de la amistad, la juventud se reunirá en Mpumalanga. Cuba, qué linda es Cuba. Que la defiende la queremos. Qué linda es Cuba, Cuba, qué linda es Cuba. Que la defiende la queremos.
Viva Cuba! Viva a luta do povo cubano! Viva o ANC! Viva Frelimo! Muito obrigado. Camarada Soli Mapaila, secretário-geral do Partido Comunista da África do Sul. Camarada Fernando Gonçalves, presidente do Instituto Cubano de Solidariedade e Amizade dos Povos. Camarada Nonvula Maconhani, primeira secretária-geral adjunta do ANC. Distintos camaradas, todo o protocolo observado. Eu vou começar a minha intervenção explicando porque é que esses camaradas vieram aqui entoar esta canção a favor de Cuba. Em 1975, Moçambique alcançou a sua independência.
I will start by explaining why those group came here and to celebrate together with Cuba in solidarity with our brothers from Cuba. In 1975, after Mozambique gained its independence,
em 1975, 93% dos moçambicanos eram analfabetos.
In 1975, 93% they didn't went to school.
Apenas 7% sabia ler e escrever.
Only 7% went to school and studied.
Presidente Samora precisava de constituir o seu governo.
And the President Samora Machel wanted to form its own government.
E os moçambicanos não estavam preparados.
And the Mozambique were not prepared.
Ele olhou para o mundo e encontrou resposta em Cuba.
President Samora Machel looked at the world and he found Cuba.
E mandou para Cuba 1.200 jovens moçambicanos.
And he sent to Cuba 1,200
para que fossem preparados para assumir os destinos de Moçambique.
In order to get prepared and to come back and lead the country.
E daí resultaram dirigentes moçambicanos que foram a base para constituir a liderança dos moçambicanos.
And those formed trained in Cuba, they came back and formed the new government led by Comrade Samora Machel.
Nos cerca de 15 anos subsequentes à nossa independência, os nossos professores eram cubanos.
Following 15 years, our teachers were from Cuba.
Os nossos médicos eram cubanos.
Our doctors were Cuban.
Os nossos carros eram cubanos. As nossas viaturas eram cubanas.
Our vehicles came from Cuba.
Os nossos assessores eram cubanos.
Our assessors came from Cuba as well.
Se Moçambique é o que é hoje, deve-se em parte a Cuba.
Mozambique is at its today is thanks from the Cuba.
A minha vénia ao povo cubano.
So thank you very much, Cuba.
E eu uso da palavra para, em nome da Frelimo e dos militantes, saudar o ANC e o governo sul-africano pela iniciativa de acolher e organizar a 7ª Conferência de Solidariedade Africana com o povo irmão de Cuba e agradecer o acolhimento que tivemos desde a nossa chegada.
I'm taking this floor to, on behalf of Frelimo and the militant, congratulate the ANC and the South African government for the initiative, for taking this initiative of hosting and organizing the 7th African Solidarity Conference with the brotherly people of Cuba, and also for the hospitality accorded to us since our arrival in this beautiful city of Mpumalanga.
Transmitimos igualmente a liderança do ANC e a liderança do povo cubano calorosos cumprimentos do camarada presidente Filipe Jacinto Nunes, presidente da Frelimo e presidente da República de Moçambique, por ocasião da realização deste importante evento que une os povos africanos numa visão única de juntos lutarmos em defesa da soberania dos nossos irmãos de Cuba.
We also convey to the ANC leadership and the Cuban leadership and people one greeting from Comrade Filipe Jacinto Nunes, President of Frelimo and President of Republic of Mozambique, on the occasion of this important event that unites the African people in a vision and a unique way of fighting together to defend the sovereignty of the Cuban people.
Prezados camaradas, a 7ª Conferência Africana de Solidariedade com Cuba, que hoje inicia, é de elevada importância na medida em que tem vindo a contribuir para o fortalecimento da irmandade existente entre Cuba e África.
Dear comrades, the 7th African Solidarity Conference with Cuba, started earlier this morning today, is of great importance as it contributes to strengthening of the brotherhood that exists between Cuba and Africa.
A realização deste evento no território sul-africano traz à nossa memória a primeira conferência realizada em 1995, no momento de júbilo do povo sul-africano após a erradicação do regime racista do apartheid, sob a liderança do histórico presidente Nelson Mandela, ícone da luta pela paz, direito à autodeterminação, coexistência pacífica, justiça social, amizade e solidariedade entre os povos.
The holding of this event in South Africa territory brings to mind the first conference held in 1995 in a moment of jubilation among the South African people after the eradication of the racist apartheid regime under the leadership of the historic President Nelson Mandela.
De facto, estas...
Icon of the struggle for people, the right to self-determination, peaceful coexistence, social justice, friendship and solidarity among all peoples.
De facto, estas conferências de solidariedade africana com Cuba são uma oportunidade única para manifestarmos o reconhecimento do altruísmo do povo e do governo cubano, ação liderada inicialmente pelo histórico comandante Fidel Castro, homem firme e determinado.
In fact, these African Solidarity Conferences with Cuba are a unique opportunity to express our recognition of the altruism of the Cuban government and the people, and action led initially by the historic commander Fidel Castro, a firm and determined man.
Caros camaradas, no dia 1 de janeiro, Cuba celebrou a passagem de 65 anos do triunfo da Revolução, ato que deu lugar à verdadeira independência daquele Estado-irmão. Assim, movidos pelo espírito de irmandade, usamos este pódio para reiterar as nossas felicitações ao povo cubano, augurando sucessos na persistente luta pela soberania e integridade territorial global de Cuba no plano nacional e internacional, e aproveitamos esta ocasião para renovar a nossa total, completa condenação ao bloqueio econômico, comercial e financeiro imposto pelos Estados Unidos da América há mais de 60 anos, por constituir uma das ações mais cruéis contra a dignidade, ao direito inalienável do Estado cubano e do seu povo.
Dear comrades, as you all know, on January 1st, Cuba celebrated the 65th anniversary of the triumph of the revolution. Any act that gave rise to the true independence of that sister state. Therefore, inspired by the spirit of brotherhood, we use this podium to reiterate our congratulations to the people, to the Cuban people, arguing success in the persistent struggle for sovereignty and the global integration of Cuba at the international level, and therefore we take advantage of this opportunity to renew our total condemnation of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed illegally by the United States of America more than 6 years ago, as it constitutes one of the most cruel actions against the dignity and the inalienable right of Cuban state and its people.
Estamos certos de que, sob a sábia e firme liderança do Partido Comunista de Cuba e do camarada Miguel Dias, primeiro secretário do Comitê Central do Partido Comunista de Cuba e presidente da República de Cuba, o povo irmão cubano continuará implacável contra todas as tentativas de destruição da Revolução Cubana e superar todos os desafios que se impõem à transformação política, econômica, social e tecnológica de Cuba.
We are certain that under the wise and firm leadership of the Communist Party of Cuba and Comrade Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, First Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba and President of the Republic of Cuba, the brotherly Cuban people will remain undeterred against all attempts to destroy the Cuban Revolution and overcome all challenges that are against to the political, economic, social, and technological transformation of Cuba.
Não iríamos terminar a nossa intervenção sem expressar o nosso profundo cometimento com a causa do povo palestino na luta pela defesa da sua soberania e nação, juntando-nos a milhares de vozes que gritam em coro: Viva a Palestina! Abaixo o genocídio perpetrado por Israel. Viva a Palestina! Abaixo o genocídio perpetrado por Israel. Abaixo o genocídio perpetrado por Israel. Avante, homens e mulheres palestinianos, na luta pela soberania nacional. A vitória é certa. A vitória é certa. A vitória é certa.
Kanimambo ainise, kanimambo ainise, kanimambo ainise, kanimambo ainise. Obrigado.
Por último,
wait, let her finish.
Por último, gostaria de manifestar a nossa abertura e reiterar o compromisso de Moçambique de acolher a 8ª Conferência Africana de Solidariedade com o povo cubano. Desejo expresso pelo camarada Filipe Jacinto Nhusse, presidente da Frelimo e presidente da República de Moçambique, dos militantes da Frelimo e do povo moçambicano, conscientes da vontade inicial manifesto na 6ª Conferência em Abuja, na Nigéria, mas que por imperativos alheios à nossa vontade impediram o seu acolhimento no território nacional. Viva Cuba! Viva! A luta continua! Now I want to test your skills of singing. I am bringing here just a little bit of our star, African star. Em Cuba, a luta continua, a luta continua, continua. Em Cuba, a luta continua, a luta continua, continua. Em África, a luta continua, a luta continua, continua. Thank you for your attention.
Finalize the translation.
So just the translation, the last part.
Sorry, because of translation, he didn't translate the last important paragraph.
Finally, I would like to express our openness and reiterate Mozambique's commitment to hosting the 8th African Conference of Solidarity with Cuba. This desire was expressed personally by Comrade Filipe Jacinto Nunes, President of Frelimo and Republic of Mozambique, the militant of Frelimo and the Mozambican people. This is our will that we expressed at the 6th conference in Abuja, Nigeria in 2019, but due to the imperative beyond our control, unfortunately prevented it to be hosted in the Mozambican territory. Long live Cuba, the fight goes on until final victory.
Guantanamera,
Guantanamera, yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crece la palma. Yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crece la palma. Antes de morir yo quiero echar mis versos del alma. ¡Ahí! Guantanamera.
Guantanamera. Guantanamera, Guantanamera. Viva Cuba, viva! Long live Frelimo, long live. Thank you very much, Comrade Amelia and the entire delegation from the heroic people of Mozambique. Mozambique has suffered a lot in this region for all of us, and it has never given up. We appreciate your continued struggle, and we appreciate that you borrowed us the holding rights, the convening rights as the liberation movement in South Africa of this important conference, and we are ready to transfer the rights to you as you indicated the readiness, and we are looking forward to end the destabilization of Mozambique. Comrades, I'm proceeding. I want to call now Comrade Mpumalanga, the Secretary of External Relations of our dear ZANU-PF. He's a militant. The young people can learn from him. Comrade Mpumalanga, come through. In the meantime, I want to ask Comrade Agosto from MPLA to come to the front, as well as Comrade Carl Arin from NDC to also join me in front. Mpumalanga, I hand over to you, my dear militant. Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Let me begin by saluting our Deputy President, Comrade Paul Mashatile, who delivered a very important message earlier today
And let me also, of course, let me acknowledge the leadership of the ANC who are here, my counterpart here, and the rest of the leadership.